Now, again, everything you say is directed at one of the three rules: invoke, demand, protect. Always. Next slide. Question 1. For the record, may I get your name and badge number, please? This is the first thing you ask when the officer approaches your car window. You want to know who it is you're dealing with and how to identify them. Make sure that your recording catches their name and badge number. That makes your recording self-authenticating. Immediately, let's just say, for instance, the officer said his name is Davis and his badge number is 123. Officer Davis, badge ID 123, is there recording being made of this encounter? Again, you want him to tell you whether or not he's making an official record of this. The things highlighted in yellow, while not required, will help you possibly down the line when you start asking the question about, when you ask for this information and they say, well, we didn't make a recording or the equipment was malfunctioning. These three things will help you prove that's a lie if you got an answer to them on your recording. So these are optional, but potentially helpful. Officer Davis, badge number 123, what is the emergency and how can I help you? Again, we're not going to assume we did anything wrong. We're not engaged in transportation. We're not commercial. Therefore, his authority to pull us over for some alleged offense under that code is non-existent. Therefore, we have to ask, why are you stopping me? Do you have a problem and do you need me to help you? Because in Texas and most other republics, they can ask for help from the people to subdue a criminal or things of that nature, and you're required to help if you can. So we're going to ask. Officer Davis, badge number 123, what facts or information are you alleging gave you probable cause to stop and accost me? Right there, we're asking the officer to validate his authority. What alleged facts are you relying on as your authority to do what you're doing to me right now? Now, of course, he's going to cite immediately something related to transportation. When we get to trial, that's going to become very important, not only in our defense, but also in our federal lawsuit when we sue everybody in the food chain after this case is over. Officer Davis, badge number 123, do you have a properly signed and issued warrant authorizing you to search me or my property? Again, documenting the right. Do you have a warrant? And this warrant specifically directed at searching, okay? Can you search me or my property? If he says yes, simply ask to see a copy of the warrant. Texas law is now written where the officer is not required to have the warrant in his possession. Used to, he had to have it with him. However, even though he doesn't have to have it in his possession, if you demand to see it, he must produce it as soon as is practicable. Once he gets you to jail, if the magistrate sends you to jail, once he brings you into the magistrate, which is where he is supposed to take you first and foremost, but never does. Again, if he takes you directly to jail, you've got a lawsuit for false imprisonment that you could go after him with. I recommend you do that. Officer Davis, badge number 123, do you have a properly signed and issued warrant of arrest that accurately describes or names me as the person to be arrested? Again, you're going to arrest me, where's your warrant? Okay? Your warrant either has to state me by name or description as the person it applies to. Where is it? Again, if he has it, ask to see it. If he doesn't give it to you right then, he's required by law to still produce it as soon as practicable. For the record, I am not operating in a for-hire capacity by engaging in any form of transportation or other commercial use of the highways. Officer Davis, badge number 123, please acknowledge that you have been so informed. Now, this officer is not going to know what you're talking about, and he's not going to care. He may refuse to answer and so on and so forth. However, you want an answer to every question you ask. When they don't answer, do what they do. Keep repeating the question till they respond. He may say, I don't care, I don't know. Doesn't matter. But you want an answer to this question before you allow him or yourself to move on. Very important that you get this, because once he admits that you told him you were not operating in transportation and he continues to do something to you using that as his authority, he has admitted his authority was gone and he held you anyway. That is going to be a very big problem for him in federal court. I had no authority to keep you there, but I did it anyway. Well, we're going to prove to him why that's a very bad idea. Officer Davis, badge number 123, am I under custodial arrest? Again, this is where he's going to lie. If I am not under custodial arrest, am I free to go? And again, he's going to tell you no. You cannot get the same answer to these two questions. They're completely opposite to each other. Either you're in a custodial arrest and not free to go, or you're not in a custodial arrest and you are free to go. They can't be the same answer. Officer Davis, badge number 123, what is the articulable probable cause that leads you to believe that I have committed or am about to commit a crime that authorizes you to stop and detain or arrest me? Again, the officer is going to cite some alleged transportation offense as his initial probable cause. You want that in the record. He's already admitted up here that you told him you were not in transportation, and now right here he's saying, but that's still what I'm going to use as my authority to accost you or do anything else to you. For the record, Officer Davis, badge number 123, in order to protect my rights and not waive any by error or accident, I wish to clarify my legal understanding of the situation. You said that I am not free to go, so I must conclude that I am in a custodial arrest and not simply an investigative detention. Therefore, I am invoking all of my fundamentally protected rights, including my right to remain silent and my right to assistance of counsel. From this point forward, I do not consent to providing you with any information or documents that could or will be used against me in a court of law or to possibly incriminate me. So please do not ask me to produce anything and give it to you. From this point forward, please do not ask me to answer any questions or to perform any tests relating to any matter whatsoever without my attorney present. All right, now the clincher to that setup is going to be this. Officer Davis, badge number 123, do you intend to harm, injure, or punish me by any method of assault, arrest, and or incarceration because I have invoked these fundamentally protected rights? Now that's going to create an immediate problem for the officer. Understand this, when you refuse to produce the demanded documents or to answer any questions, the officer is going to begin to get upset and continuously state the following. The law requires that you produce a driver's license and other information on demand of a law enforcement officer. Well, again, they're also prone to falsely accusing you of obstructing or interfering with a public duty or officer or just outright threatening to commit acts of violence against you and your property. Don't fall for the intimidation tactic. That's what this is. Invoking and refusing to waive your fundamental rights is not and cannot be converted into a crime. And if they do arrest and charge you falsely for interfering or obstructing, then you get to sue everybody. Why? Because they just punished you for invoking those protected rights. They're doing what they're doing because you invoked the right not to let them. But the moment you waive that right, you won't get it back. And you need to keep that in mind. So just remember, when the officers continue to demand that you produce a license, registration, proof of financial responsibility, or any other information or documents, despite their threats, all you do is keep repeating the following. For the record, Officer Davis, badge number 123, no law is valid if it requires me in any way to waive any fundamentally protected right in order to exercise any other right or alleged privilege. And no law can convert the free exercise of any right into a crime. I have repeatedly informed you that I choose not to waive any of my fundamentally protected rights. So I ask you once again, officer, do you intend to harm, injure, steal my property, or otherwise punish me for invoking my fundamentally protected rights? Again, we're putting them between a rock and a hard place on making this choice. Because remember, their video record is showing that all you're doing in a calm, cool, collected voice is invoking your rights. The rights that you have that are inherent, they're not constitutional rights, they're not civil rights. They are unalienable, inherent rights. And he can't have them unless you give them away. So don't. If he's going to harm you, he's going to do it anyway. If he's going to threaten you, he's going to do it anyway. Keep that to a minimum whenever possible. But don't waive your rights until you can prove that the only reason you waived them was because of the threat of violence against you or your property. Okay? That's very, very necessary. The courts will give them every possible opportunity to escape if you assist them in any way. So don't. Now, warning. Be prepared for the officer to do or threaten precisely that he is going to harm, injure, or punish you or your property in some form or fashion. So again, they're going to start threatening you with all kinds of things, including the falsified criminal charges we've already discussed. You only need to use this subitem A portion of this once. Anytime you deal with a particular officer, use it on that officer, and it's only required that you do it once because the record will show that you notified him and gave him the chance and the opportunity. Officer Davis, badge number 123, due to your attitude, demeanor, and your continuous threats to falsify charges and commit acts of violence against me and my property while displaying a deadly weapon, I feel physically threatened and in fear for my life. I demand that you cease and desist and that you get a supervisor here immediately. I do not consent to any of your actions, the use of force against me or my property, or to being forced to exit my car for any purpose, especially so that you may attempt to steal my property and or assault, injure, or kill me. Again, we're telling the officer exactly what we expect him to try to do. And it's now a part of the official record. Now it's on his back to make sure that anything he does not give the impression that that is what he's trying to do. This actually sets it up to protect you from the officer's actions by making it known to him exactly what you are expecting those actions to be. And so will any jury that sees or hears this recording. And that, folks, is what we want. We want a record that shows a jury in either court, whether it be at trial or at the federal level when we're suing, doesn't matter. We want to show that we did nothing wrong. We simply invoked our rights. We asked the officer to respect that, and all he could do was threaten us with violence when we did so. That's not going to bode well for him on the other side. Officer Davis, badge number 123, you are fully aware that I have already invoked my fundamentally protected right to remain silent and my right to assistance of counsel. Do you intend to continue in your unlawful efforts to violate my rights? Just keep repeating this like a broken record. Once you've invoked these rights, stand on these rights. So, it is my belief that the information you are demanding may possibly be used against me in a court of law or an attempt to incriminate me. And that's true. It will be. And if that is so, then upon the advice of legal counsel, I must respectfully decline to provide you with any information or evidence that possibly can or would be used against me for those purposes. You have the right not to provide it. Don't. Not a hard choice, folks. Officer Davis, badge number 123, I am asking you again, do you intend to continue to deny me in my rights and to falsely imprison me, or am I free to go? You keep repeating this section down here, and this record is going to be self-authenticating all the way through, and they're going to have a severe problem with anything they do other than just issuing the ticket. That is the purpose. Now, when you start doing this, if they start threatening to break your windows or anything of that nature, you need to know basic safety protection for yourself. Cover your eyes and like this for the side of your face and look down at the center console of your car so that anything they do won't come flying into your face. But if you do this correctly and you don't lose your temper, the odds of that happening get lower and lower with each passing question. When you are in that car, it is very important that you do not put your face against that 2 to 2.5 inch crack you have on the window. Don't turn and speak directly through it. Don't speak directly into the officer's face. Don't roll your window down any further than the 2 to 2.5 inches. When you talk, you can do it in this manner. Whatever you got to do, tilt your head up, but don't speak directly into the crack or anything else. And here is why. The officer is then going to attempt to escalate this by making false allegations. He's going to say he smelled drugs, he smelled alcohol, anything and everything to give him the grounds to come after you, since he can't do anything more with the transportation stop. You've blocked him at every turn. He wants that DUI or drug bust. That's what he wants. Don't give it to him. Now, what he did was, after they had already written the ticket, they refused to give her back her identification, which was a passport and a student ID. That's what she used for identification. They wouldn't give her her identification back, nor would they give her a copy of the citation, even though she had already signed it. They held her there for another 48 minutes trying to get her to get out of the car by doing the following. What they did was illegal. But if you don't know how to respond immediately to what they do right here, this video is no longer going to be helpful to you in a court of law. It's going to be hurtful. Why? Because the officer has made an allegation regarding a potential offense that you have failed to rebut the moment it was made. A jury sees or hears that, and immediately the presumption of guilt is going to creep into their minds. So you must expect this, you must be prepared for it, and you must respond appropriately. The moment the officer says something of one of these two things here, sir, ma'am, I smell alcohol or marijuana, and I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle. Or, sir, ma'am, are you aware that you did something, and I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle? All right? Beware. The moment they say something like this, they are making an attempt to escalate. Stop it in its tracks. This is how you respond to this. Officer Davis, badge number 123, your statement is patently false and an outright lie. Are you now trying to fabricate probable cause by making false statements into the record and false allegations against me? Now, the young lady I'm talking about, when they pulled this out of the hat on her, had no clue how to respond. Fortunately, I was on the phone listening. I told her to say exactly this, and she did. This was what happened next. Ma'am, hold on, please. I'll be right back. And the officer turns and walks away to go get advice on what do I do now. She caught me red-handed, flat-footed, making a false accusation, and the recording shows that she expected it. Her response was too quick not to expect it. But I'm practiced at this. I know how this works. So having me on the phone with her prevented what would have otherwise been a possible bad outcome for her. Now, this officer walks away for several minutes. He comes back to the window with his supervisor, and they start arguing with her about the alcohol and everything else. She keeps repeating this and saying, look, I invoke my rights. I'm not getting out of my car to do a breathalyzer. I'm not getting out of my car to discuss anything with you because I've invoked my right to remain silent and I've invoked my right to assistance of counsel. Getting out of my car to do anything of that nature will not help either of us, and I'm not doing it. Ma'am, we'll be right back with you. And they turn around and walk away from the window again. She's not waiving her rights, folks. No matter what they tell her or what they threaten her with, she's not waiving her rights. When this was all said and done, all they did was finally give her back her ID and a copy of the citation, and she went home. Yes, they held her up for a couple of hours, okay? And they wrote her tickets for things that she could have easily done if she was willing to waive her right to remain silent and everything else, by producing the documents they wanted. But believe me, when you get to trial and you start arguing not engaged in transportation, the last thing in the world you want is the state prosecutor to stand up there and say, well, they produced a license, which is associated with transportation. They produced the registration, which is associated with transportation. They said they were driving a vehicle, which is associated with transportation. And they gave them proof of financial responsibility, which is also associated with transportation. The record now shows clearly that you confessed that transportation is absolutely relevant to what you were doing, and the officer was fully justified in pulling you over to issue that citation. That, folks, is what waiving your rights has accomplished by producing the information they are demanding. Like it or not, they expect you to waive your right of due process, your right to self-incrimination, and everything else to accommodate their desire to generate revenue off the backs of you and I.